Hello and welcome to Dinim 19. I am your host, Rabbi David Katz. This hopefully will be the third and last installment of our new mini-series. As you well know by now, we tend to do a lot of mini-series that just happen. We concluded our shiur last week, says Rabbi Katz, with the Marsha. Just trying to think, which Marsha was that? It's a good question, Rabbi Katz. Which Marsha was that? About the 7 laws. Taisvis, stumbling block for the blind, the pasuk in Tehillim. Ram Bam, the prohibition of learning Torah is Kabbalah. We spoke about Lefi Pshuto, Tzorchian. We did the Shemos Rabbah with Onkelos, and about obligation versus permissibility. And our riddle, can a goy learn Torah from a Jew? We're trying to ask rhetorically, what is a goy? What is a Jew? What is Torah? What is the forbidden thing? What is the inyan? What is the ikr? And what is the Lefi Pshuto? Remember how we're saying Lefi Pshuto nowadays? Copy and paste. No thought. There's just this idea, as is stated, a Jew cannot teach a goy Torah, or a goy cannot learn Torah, and if he does, he's chayav misa. That's Lefi Pshuto, correct? Type 1. Meaning he doesn't really take feelings or thoughts into consideration. It makes a declaration. And then we have to understand what is meant in these words and concepts, who it is speaking about and who it is not speaking about. All right, and I made a little note here of where I got to. And now we'll start here, Dinim number 19. That's my note. Just reading over some notes here. Hold on. All right, let me just get warmed up. We jumped to Shabbos. If you remember that from the first class. The Shabbos and learning Torah are really, they go hand in glove. If you remember that from Beitzah 16, 16a. The concept of a non-Jew doing Shabbos is he cannot do Shabbos like a Yisrael, children of Israel. Which means it's contingent on malacha, creative labor. The non-Jew cannot stop doing creative labor. That's another poor party line. When you hear in works like the Divine Code that the non-Jew cannot stop working 24/7. How many of you ever heard that before from the Divine Code camp? The non-Jew cannot keep Shabbos because they have to work 24/7. If that were true, it would be one thing, and it would be horrendous. The word for work is malacha, which is not the same as avoda or avodah. What they're saying is creative labor can never stop, or the world will return to a wasteland. The Jewish people were given a Shabbos to stop doing malacha, writing, making fire. It doesn't mean the non-Jew is then a slave 24/7. So it's contingent on not refraining from doing malacha. Hold on again, I'm just reading my notes here, getting inside this material. I wrote here, Kamash Milan Ein Shabbos Nafkamina Shefa Bechina Charisha Mizolos Ela Talmud Torah Ein Izrach Yisrael Shaykh L'Charisha. Hold on a second here. I'm going to skip this part. I don't think this is more for my notes, and I don't want to get into this. I got this whole idea about Shabbos for the non-Jew, but the bottom line of that is if you're going to keep Shabbos and not do creative labor, then you have to have Torah to learn as your creative labor. The ignoramus Jew, or the non-Jew without Torah, Torah, as we said, is the knowledge of the Mitzvot, will not be able to keep Shabbos because you cannot keep Shabbos without learning Torah. There has to be malacha done in the world, lest it gives reason for one to die. So nobody ever stops completely. So therefore, the Havamina, the I would have thought, is that the non-Jew cannot keep Shabbos because he has no Torah to replace a diminished workload of malacha. You got how I'm saying this? That's why I wanted to stop where I was before. Everybody has to do malacha in the world, creative labor. There's a principle that if you don't, you die. Meaning you have to be a human. You cannot sit in a room all day and say, that's what I do. You don't. You got to do stuff. It's mankind. You have to make fire. You have to eat and cook, right? You are obligated to be human beings. But there is spiritual labor and lesser spiritual labor. If you are engaging in spiritual labor, then that means that you're studying Torah and you ease up on physical creative labor. If you don't have Torah, then you cannot keep Shabbos. You got that? One or two? Because what are you going to do? Are you going to sit in a room all day and stare at the wall and say, I'm doing something? So the rabbis have assumed if you don't have Torah, you don't have Shabbos, which is a fair and safe assumption. And remember, we're saying Torah is words of Torah, which is the ikar of Torah, which is the reasons and investigations of the mitzvahs. But what if we have a non-Jew who has unearthed a lot of Torah in his 7 laws? Now there's a reason for him to ease back in the creative or from the creative labor and engage in Torah study. Are you aware of what we just accomplished? It was another pitfall of here's why the non-Jew cannot learn Torah. Because there's no reason for him to, as we see with Shabbos. But we disprove that logically. If the non-Jew does have Torah, enough of it, that he can engage in it to the extent that it eases back his workload of malacha, i.e. making fire, cooking, the 39 labors, creative labors. So it is possible that the 7 laws do have the potential to saturate with Torah. That is the position of the Miri. That you do 7, you learn about 7, and from there the whole Torah becomes a possibility. And remember, all of these prohibitions are on Akum. How many of you are aware that this Dinim class, the series of Dinim, is Dinim for Akum, type 1? Dinim for Akum, type 1. Which is why we use words like Goy and Akum and Nachri in the Dinim class. And we're seeing that even as the Dinim go, there's leverage. And remember, when it says Akum, that is not saying Ger. There are 2 paths of which a non-Jew can learn Torah. A Nachri or an Akum or a Goy that learns Torah is like a Kohen Gadol. How many of you have ever heard of that before? There's 3 different versions: Goy, Nachri, and Akum. That's for somebody who's coming on to the 7 laws or somebody converting before they convert. But there's another version. There's another version. A ger that learns Torah is like a Kohen Gadol. And that is not a convert or someone coming to the 7 laws. And for him, it's a whole separate scenario. Then they explain the Rambam. Again, the Goy cannot keep Shabbos or learn Torah. Hilchos Malachim 10:9. And the commentator, if you do your Chayav Misa, the commentator says, Rak l'shem mitzvah shvisa. This prohibition of the Rambam, the famous prohibition of the Rambam, is when you set out to keep Shabbos like a Jew. But if you are not setting out to keep Shabbos like a Jew, that is not talking to you. That means malacha. And again, this is the same type of thinking as we saw in Beitza 16a. I have a note here. Hold on a second. And, even if he says, even if you have kavanah to keep Shabbos like a Jew, it doesn't matter. Because you will do malacha. And thereby you did not do Shabbos. So it's not shaykh the kavanah. The only real prohibition is an entire day of rest because of malacha. You understand that? The real issue is if you do no malacha all day. So the rabbinic stance of not to keep Shabbos is very hard to achieve. It's not something that most people that they tell that to, it's not applicable. All right, that goes that part about Shabbos. Again, you understand what's going on here? Shabbos is only possible if you have Torah. They assume there is no Torah. Thereby, there is no Shabbos. So if there is no Shabbos, and if you keep Shabbos, you're in trouble. But now we're saying not only what we said before, but it's actually very hard to keep Shabbos. Especially since there's a lack of Torah, you're going to have to do Malacha. So it comes out there's really never a way to not keep Shabbos because you're going to do Malacha due to the fact that Torah is lessened. So again, we try to show that learning Torah is not possible, and then we saw it is possible. Then there's the Malbim. And he says Shabbos is a heter to Israel. Remember we said about the meat that Israel mitzvah can be malacha. Yeah. A lot of mitzvahs are malacha. Making challah is a malacha. Remember we said by meat that the children of Israel were given a permission to eat the limb of a live animal. Remember that? In a way that the Akum is not allowed. So if the non-Jew were to eat that type of meat if an Akum would eat that kind of meat with a Jew, that Akum would have to become ger. Shabbos also is a heter, a permission. Why? Remember, we're saying that malacha keeps the world going, type 1. We cannot stop malacha. That is mankind's duty. All right, no other creation stops doing its thing. You cannot stop doing your thing either. So the Jewish people at Sinai were given the permission to ease up on malacha in creation. Because you can't just do that. You have to be given that allowance by God. You can really boil Sinai down on one angle and saying it was God giving Shabbos to a people. And that's why it's forbidden for the Akum. Because Israel was given that permission. Just like the meat. Remember the meat. The Akum cannot eat the limb of a living animal, but a Jew can. As we understand that thing to be. Which was the shech to the animal, which is considered dead, but it was still shaking, and there was still blood in the meat. But we see that a ger is like a Kohen Gadol, which is the language of ger dafka. So again, the ger is a part of Sinai. You can say quite simply because the ger has a lot of Torah. A ger that learns Torah is like a Kohen Gadol. All right. We may actually almost be done. The Miri 59a of Sanhedrin says learning Torah is allowed. Again, that's one of your biggest opinions out there. Can a non-Jew learn Torah? The Miri simply says yes and explains how there. Now's where it gets complicated. There's a commentator, the Tosfos Harosh, commenting on our main tractate, Chagiga 13a. Do not put a stumbling block before the blind. So if we have a Nachri, can the Jew teach the Nachri Torah? The answer is no. The Nachri is stealing. The Jew's placing a stumbling block. The Jew is simply not allowed. The non-Jew is simply not allowed. Those are the 4 reasons given. But mainly a stumbling block for the blind. And that took us, remember, a couple classes ago in Baba Basra. We call it the Alan Cecil Project. A Jew cannot put a stumbling block before the blind of a non-Jew. The Jew cannot tell the non-Jew to castrate his animal. Because the non-Jew has a mitzvah to not castrate an animal. So if I say I'm Jewish and I'm more important, castrate the animal for me. I place a stumbling block for the blind just because you didn't know that you are prohibited. Therefore, I sin by having you do it. And it's like I did it myself anyway, so I didn't win anything. Torah is the same way. The Nachri doesn't know what's going on in Torah. And remember, we're saying Torah is Kabbalah. It's like the real knowledge and wisdom of the mitzvahs. So if you were to go tell a Christian all about the mitzvah of whatever, it's pretty safe to assume that that Christian would take that information and run with it the wrong way. Therefore, it's putting the stumbling block for the blind. Then there's another reason we said. The King David verse 147:19 of Psalms. The rabbis learn that to be, that is saying you cannot learn or teach into the non-Jewish world. Torah. I think we're done. That's all I have in my notes. All right, do you guys know what we just did? Do you know what we just did? Can a non-Jew learn about his 7 laws? 1 or 2, yes or no? 1, 2, 2, 1. All right, everybody says a non-Jew can learn Torah of his 7 laws. Type 1. Can a Jew teach a non-Jew Torah about his 7 laws? 1 or 2. Now, remember, we don't know what a Jew is, or a non-Jew, or Torah. Type 1. Type 1. So we know that there's some coalition that works that we can teach the non-Jew, correct? Please type 1. But we don't know how to interpret that. Remember what we're saying. Is this Dinim class 1 or 2? This is Dinim class, you're saying. And thereby it's Dinim for Goy, Akum, Nachri. Type 1. And the question is, can a non-Jew learn Torah? And we are interpreting non-Jew to be Goy, Akum, Nachri. And we know that they can learn about their 7 laws, do their 7 laws, and a Jew can teach them. Correct? Type 1. Anything after that, we don't know. If we assume a Jew can teach a non-Jew Torah, type 1. Type 1. We don't know what Torah means. Type 1. We don't know what a non-Jew is. Type 1. So we didn't really get anywhere. I mean, we kind of did, but didn't. We know that there is such a thing as a non-Jew, and they learn Torah and do mitzvahs. But by putting the meat on those bones, if you don't know what's going on, you're already off. And that's where people say, I know it all. Any non-Jew cannot learn Torah, blah, 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 blah. It's wrong. Remember how we started the class a couple weeks ago? All you did was you looked up a Rambam that you didn't understand, and you told it over to a bunch of non-Jews, whatever those non-Jews are, and you think you know the answer. So then remember how we went about it, right? We looked it up a little deeper, and now we're pretty confident. A non-Jew can only learn about his 7 laws, and a Jew can teach a non-Jew Torah. And there's a couple other issues, right? King David's verse, stumbling block for the blind, Rambam stealing, it's forbidden for a Jew or it's forbidden for a non-Jew. That rabbi right there would tell you it's complicated, but it's still forbidden beyond the 7. Type 1. Type 1. The only way to get out of this, as always, is to go ger. All of the prohibitions are on Goy, Nachri, Akum. In the King David verse, another verse is related, the prohibitions on the Akum and the Goy. And the ger is always included in the permissibility. So we have a division between a ger who learns Torah as like a Kohen Gadol and a Goy / Akum that learns Torah as like a Kohen Gadol. You see the distinction? If you have a Noahide Goy, he's like a Kohen Gadol when he learns his 7 mitzvahs. Not the same level as a ger that learns Torah like a Kohen Gadol. It was a higher revelation and a lesser revelation. The higher revelation can do more than the lesser revelation. So let me ask you guys a question. Can a non-Jew learn Torah? What do you think? What do you think? Random non-Jew walks into the Chabad rabbi's office, and he says, "Hi, my name is Johnny Noahide. I'm a non-Jew. I'd like to learn Torah." The Chabad rabbi would say, "Okay, but only certain Torah I'll teach you." Type 1. Your job, proverbial you, is to fill in those blanks. What kind of Torah? What kind of non-Jew? What kind of reasons? So the answer to our riddle is yes, they can. And it's up to the rabbi, the scholar, to know what that means. And that's what we call the Torah of the Ger. The Ger teaches all the different distinctions, which, by the way, we wrote a book on it, and it'll be coming out soon. Getting into the distinctions of all the distinctions. Are you a Nachri Chassid? Are you an Akum Rasha? Are you Tinach Shenishba? Are you Ger Toshav Gamor? Are you Ger Toshav? And these are not levels or statuses. It's more about maturity in terminology. A Christian is just a strong Nachri. Remember we said in Bates' 16a? It's his coordinate. He can keep Shabbos, but he's blind and he doesn't know that. And if you try to tell him, he won't get it. So don't tell him, because that's putting a stumbling block for the blind. The Ger made it out of Klippa, and he can handle it. He knows what's going on. So we know the answer is yes. There's never a time where a Jew can say, I have no business teaching a non-Jew. Type 1. And we know through the Onkelos story, a Ger can come all the way attached to Israel and learn the Torah completely. So there's Ger, and there's Akum, and everything in between. That's where the class really ends. It really is a tzarech ian. You need to look inside. The problem with people is they think that they have to guess and make it up. The chiddush is the Torah has all these answers in it, but they're not contained in that one Rambam or all of your party line locations. The Torah of the Ger is vast. The Torah of the non-Jew is vast. And that's really, I think, what all I have to say about this. Any questions or comments? Yes, it does. Ger defines the space. Ger is completely safe ground. Nachri is able to learn, but going beyond the letter of the law, you have to know the space. There are 4 possible problems. It's just forbidden on both sides. King David are putting a stumbling block for the blind. Which means you don't teach the Christian Torah outside of the 7 laws. But once you clear the hurdles that are presented through Akum, and you have secured Ger, then the terrain changes. Some would say, how do we know that there are levels of non-Jews? Look at the sources. The Maharsha says the Jew has to teach the Christian level of Nachri 7 laws if he wishes to. So that's already, we'll call that Akum Goy Nachri. And we know that all the prohibitions are on that level of Akum. And we know there are Ger sources that are not Jewish that, for example, the Ger that learns Torah is like a Kohen Gadol. And then you have the Miri explaining that, which opens it up beyond the 7. And then there are those that say, Torah, yes, but what is Torah? What is Kabbalah? And we know that straight up Kabbalah you cannot teach the Christian on his mitzvahs. So we have the klalim. We have the guidelines and the principles. Once you build a case, then the terrain changes. And there are sources to cater to that approach.